High school and green, royal we culture we clean. Fi straighten up something that them lean with transparency from the agency of the I Supreme. Cosmic intuition and initiation from within. I'm another angel and on a wing like pigeon. Concept by accept of I origin, representing free-minded article breaching. Man without a woman is like a house without kitchen. People without them roots is like plants for edging. Everything perish without oxygen. Them a vibration, them a waves, and them a sound palm rhythm. Hey! Time for the lions. Tell them one story. Listen to the lion voice, yeah? Up.
It's important because it also shows the defeat of white supremacy. White supremacy had almost achieved complete supremacy over the globe. And it was in the holy mountains of Zion that it was stopped. So prophetically, Satan was able to occupy Zion for a time, but he couldn't stay, drive him out. So, and the beautiful thing too, one of the things that was recorded is how His Majesty was merciful on even the Italian soldiers. A lot of them stayed in Ethiopia and even served. He was criticized for that, how he didn't exact revenge on the Italian soldiers after all the atrocities that they had committed. But again, the forgiveness of that divine forgiveness, we can't overstand it as human beings, but His Majesty exemplified this in a real life on earth from the throne of David. So we give thanks. Again, the defeat of white supremacy. And from that time, white supremacy globally has been on retreat. Now, it looks like it's a prosper, but we see it's crumbling. The spiritual underpinnings have been discredited and abandoned. And now it's just, the brute force, the cornered animal, the scared animal trying to take down. But Babylon has fallen. Babylon the Great has fallen. And African Victory Day was the beginning of that fall.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice. Ain't got no money, I'm short of cash, but a little bit I got to make it last. Some driving in the fast lane, drive too fast, and when they crash, no for them crack like glass. Some act like they never had no past. I ask them about
Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I. Glory and honor in the name of His chosen Queen, Empress Waziri Menen. My name is Kwasi Bansu, aka the Dejazmatch Kwasi, aka Ras Kwasi, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Panafrican Happy Man. I'm an entertainment attorney, I'm an author, I'm an actionist, I'm an artist, and right now I'm the host of the Lion Voice. Welcome to the Lion Voice and the Lion Voice Network. Today is a very special day. Today we celebrate African Victory Day. This episode is a very special episode because this episode we celebrate African Victory Day, which is May 5th, which is yesterday. I told you that my 16th wedding anniversary was May 4th, so I have to big up the Royal Queen. But the reason that we chose May 4th was because May 5th was African Victory Day. So at our wedding, at midnight, we took time to acknowledge this victory. So that would tell you how important African Victory Day is to Rastafari and the Rastafari family. So on this episode, I want to talk about what is African Victory Day, why is African Victory Day important, and what we can do in this time to honor and to continue that African victory. So we're going to break it up into 3 parts. So we're gonna deep dive as to why this channel core audience is Rastafari, but we also have a Pan-African audience. And this is not just an important day for Rastafari, but this is an important day for the whole Pan-African community, because this was ground zero for the rising of the African continent, which continues today. Because as we're going to talk about when we talk about what is African Victory Day, this was the largest invasion on the African continent in modern times by the Roman government, aka the Italian army. So, with that said, let's jump into what is African Liberation Day. So, African Liberation Day celebrates May 5th, 1941, which was the day that Haile Selassie made his triumphant re-entry into Addis Ababa. And this date was significant because on May 5th, 1936, Addis Ababa was occupied by the Italian forces. So 5 years to the day that it was occupied, Haile Selassie made his triumphant re-entry, and that date was planned so that it could signify that, because it was a huge blow to Ethiopia when it fell. And to all of my science fiction, to the nerds, them, if you know about Star Wars, you know the Empire Strikes Back, when the evil empire takes over the galaxy, and we know the fiction is inspired by the modern day. So you can imagine May 5th, 1936 as a Empire Strikes Back moment where everything looked desolate, everything looked dark, enemy forces occupying the last independent capital on the African continent, Addis Ababa. Remember, we have to set the stage, because this is the lions telling the story. And while we tell the story, before we get into the story, remember, I am also an author. I wrote Haile Selassie's Ethiopia, The Rise of the Priestly Warrior Kings, Volume 1. This book is written like an epic fantasy story. We are telling the story of Ethiopia because I think it's critical to everything that we are doing as we seek to rebuild Zion. We're building the heaven on earth. We have to restore the narrative, and Ethiopia earns a special place in that narrative. Why? Because of that unconquered genealogy. Ethiopia ties us all as Africans to that unconquered mass. And the name for Ethiopia during this period was Abyssinia. And it was given this by the Arabs because it was the land of mixed people. What that mean? That mean there was all type of black people. To this day, Ethiopia have the gambit of black people, from the Semitic, black phenotype, Kushite. Any type of black person, you will find them in Ethiopia. So Ethiopia, to the Pan-African movement, is very important to us because it represents a microcosm of the great African continent. Also, remember, it's part of the Rift Valley. It's the source of the Nile River. The Blue Nile starts in the highlands of Ethiopia. And remember that the Blue Nile supplies 2/3 of the Nile's overall water mass. So you have the Blue Nile in Ethiopia and you have the White Nile in Uganda. They connect in Khartoum in Sudan, and then they flow out into Egypt, which is basically a massive flood basin. So Ethiopia is always significant that this land, the land where the gods love to be, as the Greeks said, was never conquered. So this white supremacy never was able to subdue the land of Ethiopia, this ancient land. And this is why, as Rastafari, we identify this as the seat of the Almighty, because it is what it is. And this is why I love Rastafari so much, because, as we tell the story, they are just unrefutable facts. So no matter if you like Ethiopia, you don't like Ethiopia, it cannot be denied that Ethiopia was never conquered. And then some people say, well, the Italians were there for 5 years. But guess what happened? They only had control over certain cities. They had no control over the countryside, and they were suffering great losses because of the efforts of the patriots. You know, the country never gave in. The fighting never stopped, not one day. So this is why we call it Italian time in Ethiopia occupation, and that's why Ethiopia remains as the only country never conquered or colonized. There was never a time where the Italians had free reign over anywhere outside of the cities, and at that time, Ethiopia did not even have as many cities as it now boasts. So the Italian influence was very limited during that period of occupation. And again, they suffered tremendous losses, guerrilla warfare. Man, I take it to them every time them leave the city, you know. So this was a very important. Why did the Italians invade? The Italians, this was coming on the, you know, this is the precursor to World War II. The fascist uprising, you know, the fascists came to power. Italy was in economic turmoil prior to that. So the fascists put up Benito Mussolini as their figurehead, the fall guy, you know, because they were also blessed by the Vatican. There's evidence to show that. But the fascists rise to power, and one of the things that Mussolini used to galvanize that public support was that he was going to avenge the Italians for Ottawa, and that, you know, the humiliation that the Italians suffered at Ottawa would be avenged. So when Italy came down into Ethiopia, this was not no easy thing, you know. Ottawa, you know, depending on the sources, up to 30,000 Italian men were dispatched to fight in Ottawa. At that time, it was the biggest colonial army that ever had marched on Africa. And this time was the same. You know, some estimates go up to 300,000 Italian soldiers, largest land invasion of Africa in the modern era. There has been no other. And it just so happens, let's put on our spiritual cap, that this is Rome, the same Rome that crucified Yeshua, same Rome that conquest over Egypt, same Rome that had controlled most of the known world at one point, you know, invading the land where the rulers are claiming to sit on the throne of King David, the great King David, and hold the Ark of the Covenant within their country. And this is, remember that this is the Rome, the same Rome that's supposed to be the seat of Peter. You know, this is the holiest of the Christian nations according to the European story. So this nation invading this ancient African nation that has never been conquered or colonized with this size force, you can imagine. When I was a young Ras, you know, the elders said they were coming for the Ark of the Covenant because the Pope wanted to get the Ark of the Covenant because that was the thing the throne of Peter didn't have. The Ark of the Covenant was preserved by the throne of King David. So they were coming for the Ark and for Ethiopia to cleanse. And when you look at the methodology that they use with the spraying of mustard gas, they put crop duster planes. Can you imagine? You know, let's say that Satan is a real man, if you don't believe in these things, and he was going to invade a place, total conquest, remove the people. And he had crop duster planes, and he fitted the crop duster planes with mustard gas. Can you imagine? Because we talk about the, you know, or we look in horror with the gas chambers that Hitler used against the European Jews, but nobody talks about the mustard gas that was sprayed. A fine mist, you know, the planes are making multiple things over populated areas of just mustard gas. The gas touch your face, it's burning you, you know, you're melting, your feet, you walk on it, your feet boil up everything, you know. You're inhaling it in your lungs, it burn your lungs. His Majesty talk about how he inhaled some gas and, you know, incurred damage during the Battle of Maichu when he took the battlefield, the final battle before he went into exile. Which of these world leaders, while they're head of state, is going to fight with their armies? We'll wait. So when we hear some guys, this is majesty, we see it and we laugh, because they don't know. They have not, they're surface. They've done surface. And for people to say, well, when His Majesty fought in the war, which he fought in the war, His Majesty fought on the battlefield. There's a famous picture of His Majesty stepping on the bomb. We could look at that and say, well, no weapon formed against I shall prosper. And we could show that, and you couldn't tell a man he was wrong. This is why this history is so interesting, because all of these things that you see within the biblical prophecy, His Majesty, you see them fulfilling, and you can disagree with the interpretation, but you cannot say a man wrong, because he literally is there fulfilling. The bomb didn't explode. His Majesty stepping on the bomb. No weapon formed against I shall prosper. That's an example. When you talk about 1936 and His Majesty going to the League of Nations, the first time in world history that a head of state is addressing a world council of nations, and he's condemning them according to the law that they set, the League of Nations charter. Then you look in the Revelation and see, he shall smite them with a two-edged sword which come from his mouth, which is the word of truth. You can disagree with the interpretation, but you cannot say a man is wrong. I'm going to show you right there. And he's on the throne of King David, declare his name, among the nations, and then execute judgment. God and history shall remember your judgment. Put it on the record. As a lawyer, we like that, but we see these things, as the lawgiver, Judah. So all of them things that is part of this tradition. Ones who have the African spirituality will give you different interpretation. That's the beauty of Rastafari. And one of the things I want to say is that we shouldn't fight because of our differences. We have to unite in this time, because just as that time the beast shall make war against the lamb, which is a next prophecy that enough of our elders pointed out to us with the invasion, because remember, this is shortly after the coronation of His Majesty. His Majesty had just subdued the nation. This was the first period of relative peace, particularly during a transition of power that Ethiopia had seen. A constitution was granted in 1931. His Majesty had managed to bring the great Rastas, put them into the Senate. He had difficulties with Rastas like Ras Haile, of Gojam, which, never depend that, them and they run them place like a area done. Him having place and taxing the people, and him first nightclub, for example, in Addis Ababa, Ras Haile. So His Majesty was dealing with these characters, Ras Kasa, different races, Ras Mengesha, or Ras Mulageta, different races, in different places. And actually, the book I'm reading right now, based on a recommendation from the Lion Pride, is Haile, and we'll make this book the Reading Ras selection of the episode. Haile Selassie's War. Anthony Mockler, I believe, is the author. I'm reading it now, and I'm really full enjoying it. It's about the Italian invasion, and you really see all of the things that His Majesty had to go through to even get the crown, because it goes into the details in terms of what the realm was like, and you see how His Majesty uses wise mind to outmaneuver all of the other ones who were vying, because all of the different branches of the Solomonic throne or the Solomonic family felt that they had right to the throne. So, His Majesty, again, light years ahead of everyone else. And he's modernizing. He was on a modernizing mission because he's trying, he had traveled. He had seen where the rest of the world was in terms of Europe, in terms of progress, the Middle East. He had gone, and he knew that in order to preserve Ethiopia's age-old independence, they would have to modernize or they would be vulnerable. And so he's on that, and a lot of the other Rastas weren't on that vibration. They were fine with things how they are because they were all benefiting. And so it was a struggle. So right after this, on the heels of this, the Italian invasion, the beast shall make war against the lamb. And his mind to tell you that even at the beginning of the war, he withdrew the Ethiopian soldiers into the Ethiopian border so that history would record that this was not due to Ethiopian aggression, as the Italians tried to paint with the Wall incident. And His Majesty made sure that, the history books would record that this was literally the beast making war. And we see that. So, you know what I mean? This was what, these are some of the things that we celebrate when we celebrate African Victory Day. What are some of the things that make African Victory Day important to the item? Put a comment, drop a comment, please, so that we can share. Before we go any further, let me just big up the sponsor, CMAS. Yes, telling the item, say, CMAS is top of the line. Strength, I was a little bit under the weather when I did the Lion Law. And if you can check that out, I drop Lion Law, Entertainment Law program every Wednesday. I was a little under the weather on that stuffy. This is a couple of days later, you can see. CMAS, anytime I get any little sickness and little shake up, never drop on my face. It's rarely I have to be laying down in bed. We just do what we have to do. But you can't do that if your immune system is not strong. So big up CMAS, the sponsor. Also, have to big up the Lion Pride. Remember, if you subscribe, you are part of the Lion Pride. Big up the Lion Pride. Big up the Lion Pride on Patreon. We are building an ecosystem on Patreon. Big up me Patreon. We're commenting, we're interacting in the Patreon. So we give thanks for that. Give thanks for all of the blessings. We want to expand. So if you want to be part of the core of what we're building here, join us on Patreon. Support with your financial support. If you want to build Netflix, you want to build Amazon, let us build a Rastafari network here on the second largest. Let us build a Rastafari network here on the second largest search engine on the internet. Why not? We say ownership, and I time. This is something that we preach to our clients. So again, it feels good to be on this journey, actualizing something that I've seen in my heavens for many, many years now. In terms of creating a creative ecosystem, I'm now actually doing it. And I want to just big up because we're over 800 Lion strong. We're moving to hit 1,000 subscribers by June 1st. So let us push Lion Pride. Tell your brethren, tell your sister, this is where we're congregating online. And this channel is a solution channel, so we're not going to be into all of the mix up, that type of content, who's not doing what. This channel, we're about the building of Zion. I'm in the process myself of moving to Africa. So we're on that repatriation journey. I'm going to be sharing my journey as we move into Ghana. We have Ghana content on the platform. You can go to the Ghana playlist for the episodes around the works in Ghana with Habisha, with all of the different entities as well. So This is where we're congregating on the internet. So if you want to see that happen, you want to strengthen those works, please become a part of the core Lion Pride on Patreon. Also, remember we do have the Reading Ras merch. You see how we're moving with the Reading Ras. We're bringing back the love of reading physical books. You see, I have my bookshelf here. Every Rastafari person must have a true berry. We don't say lie berry because the lies them berry. We say true berry. So every Rast should have a true berry where your truth is there for your family. If the internet crash, you have your repository of knowledge. This is Rastafari way. His Majesty had his private library. If it was recorded in Hans Lockhart, the mission. So that is important. So support the Reading Ras merch. Make we push out that sound of reading as part of our thing. All right. Seal up with the housekeeping. Let's get forward to African Victory Day. Why was African Victory Day important? Three reasons that I would say it's important. One, it shows that if you don't give up, it's the ultimate unity. I said the Empire Strikes Back moment for those who know science fiction. This is His Majesty's low point in the chart. So it, as the example, as the archetype for the Rastafari man, it shows that in your season of life, when you're in your lowest, you can still walk with dignity and majesty, because even in those dark days in England, everyone testified how, the composure of the emperor, never saw him frazzle, never gave up hope, never stopped working. And he detailed that in his autobiography, volume 1 and 2. And you see how you conduct yourself. In fact, the autobiography was written while he was in exile. So that was part of, a time where he had a time where he's not dealing with the affairs of the state. So he said, this is a time to document my journey, because I know a generation will come that's going to want to know things. And again, the lion telling his own story. So this is part of everything that we're doing. So that's number one. It shows, how to survive, and that no matter who you are, you could be the King of Kings, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. You're going to go through things from you in a physical form as man. Look at Yeshua with the crucifixion. Same thing. So no matter who, that is part of walking this walk as a man. And we say Haile Selassie, fully human, fully divine. So there's no illusion that we have about him being fully human and living the human experience fully. But we know that the internal of who he is the Almighty I. So same with I and I, we seek to manifest that Almighty within us, which is why we are called by his name and why we are called to build Zion on earth, not die and go to heaven, but manifest that heavenly realm, in this physical three-dimensional realm as it was in the beginning before it was corrupted. That's our mission on this earth. And African Victory is the shows that after that low point, that victory, that re-entry into Addis Ababa, May 5th, this is where it starts. So for all of us, we remember this day, and it blossomed into the foundation, and it blossomed into the flower, that new flower that became the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union, and ultimately the unification of the African continent and the African diaspora, which is happening. We saw that, the sixth region has been declared from 2012 in the African Union, which declared the diaspora as part of Africa. So all of those CARICOM countries, the diaspora in Brazil, in North America, in Europe, all designated as part of the sixth region of Africa. So these are things that are unfolding in real life. Again, this story that I'm telling here in Haile Selassie's Ethiopia from our perspective is unfolding, and it's a wonderful thing to witness. An African Victory Day is important. It's important because it also shows the defeat of white supremacy. White supremacy had almost achieved complete supremacy over the globe. And it was in the holy mountains of Zion that it was stopped, you know. So prophetically, Satan was able to occupy Zion for a time, but he couldn't stay, you know, drive him out. So, and the beautiful thing too, one of the things that was recorded is how His Majesty was merciful on even the Italian soldiers. A lot of them stayed in Ethiopia and even served. He was criticized for that, how he didn't exact revenge on the Italian soldiers after all the atrocities that they had committed. But again, the forgiveness of that divine forgiveness, we can't overstand it as human beings, but His Majesty exemplified this in a real life on earth from the throne of David. So we give thanks. Again, the defeat of white supremacy. And from that time, white supremacy globally has been on retreat. Now, it looks like it's a prosper, but we see it's crumbling. You know, the spiritual underpinnings have been discredited and abandoned. And now it's just, you know, the brute force, the cornered animal, the scared animal trying to take down. But Babylon has fallen. Babylon the Great has fallen. And African Victory Day was the beginning of that fall globally. We're still living in the period of reverberation and the last rally back. Cause the beast had tried rally back, but him fall. And he never was able to accomplish the task, which was the conquest of the whole earth. And so, again, in fall, and we give thanks to see that. The other lesson that why it's important is because, again, just like Adwa, the kingdom of Ethiopia, which had now become provinces, they came together. They united around the emperor. The patriots, you know, the emperor was funneling them intelligence and trying to funnel in resources, and had the Bible translated into Amharic so that the soldiers could have the words of the prophecy there with them as they were fighting. These were the things that His Majesty was doing while he was in exile. And, you know, as soon as His Majesty came forward, you know, I was brought forward by the British. From he touched the ground, lifted up the energy of the country, and the Italians fell quickly because the people them were so rejoiced. And also it was the global chess. As long as the king is on the move and you don't have the king, you can never say the place is conquered. And His Majesty knew that. He was offered money, I think over $1 million at the time, to abdicate the throne for Italy. Of course, he denied that. So again, tempted like Yeshua was tempted on the mountain. If you take that perspective, if you don't take that perspective, no need to fight or fuss. We share the perspective and we build from there. So, but you cannot tell a man he's wrong when he gives you his interpretation, because he can show you this, he can show you that, and parallel and everything balanced. This is a longer episode, but we give thanks. Oh, what can we do today? What can we do today to honor African victory and to really, live the tradition so that the tradition is meaningful and continues to manifest fruit? Well, one of the things that we can do is to recall that this victory, again, it led to, not long after, 32 independent African nations signing the Organization of African Unity Charter. And from there, the expulsion of physical colonialism from the continent. And the OAU was successful. No matter how you criticize the OAU, the fight against colonialism, a lot of it led from Addis Ababa. His Majesty was funding all of the resistance movements in Southern Africa. Ethiopia sent troops army down to the Congo. So after this victory, after the return, His Majesty built up the Ethiopian army to one of the most powerful on the African continent, building the Harar Military College, different military academies, so formal training. His Majesty was the Minister of Education, and took an institutional approach to all of the development in the nation. So, for example, Nelson Mandela's first firearm was given to him by His Imperial Majesty. His training came by His Imperial Majesty. The militant arms of all of these resistance movements would come to Addis Ababa, sit with His Majesty, and then get training. A lot of the Pan-Africanists ignore that part, which is a key part of the whole thing. The other thing we can do is to educate young people about this day so that it lives. It should be just like you have Martin Luther King Day, all of these other days, because as a Pan-African story, and we're telling our own story, we're putting our own, this Ethiopian victory over the Rome, the largest army to invade Africa, is important. The other thing, they talk about the British liberated, but a lot of those British forces were their forces from Kenya. So it was black man same way that were fighting to liberate Ethiopia. So even though it's a British led force, there's still a Pan-African element within the whole fullness in terms of who was actually doing the fighting to liberate Ethiopia from fascism. So we have to tell the story, and again, ground zero for what continues to blossom. The story continues to evolve into what we are seeing today, which is black people from around the world, the diaspora, starting to return home little by little. It's a trickle now, it's a stream now, and soon the rivers will open and flow because it's a DNA, it's an ancestral calling. Mama is calling our children, and many are answering. So this is part of that, and many are answering. So this is part of that story. Finally, African Victory Day is important because we have to remember that from here, His Majesty established Ethiopian Airline. A lot of the institutions that were started after the coronation that were destroyed by the Italians, His Majesty redoubled. And, the growth here is unprecedented in terms of post-war growth that His Majesty was able to orchestrate. This is, the period where you really see the brilliance. His Majesty speaks, I think he had maybe $5 million US dollars after the war when he came back. He talks about how the British tried to take over the country. He had to bring in, this is when he had to bring in America to help counterbalance the British influence. So it was a whole period, but I think this is one of the periods where His Majesty showed that superhuman brilliance in terms of how he was able to build Ethiopia, the building of Zion. And that mission still confronts us, and we are His children called by His name. Our mission is that building of Zion, building of Africa. The stone that the builder refused has now become the head corner. And for this whole planet to know peace on earth, the parents, the mothers and fathers of civilization, we have to start it. We can't look to the children to lead the path to peace and security for all. It has to start at home. And this is why His Majesty took a militant stand for peace. Refusing to fight the Derg, refusing to fight against the student uprisings. His Majesty took that militant stand, behold the upright, mark the perfect man, for the end of that man is peace. Again, these are things that are fulfillment. His Majesty did this. The coming of Shiloh, with Shiloh meaning peace on earth. So peace on earth have to manifest within man before it can manifest within man, within humanity. It has to start somewhere. The highest of himself shall establish I and I. All of these things are teachings that our elders, fortunately passed to us, that we, I think, in my humble opinion, have the responsibility to pass to the youth. And that's why I'm so happy to be able to have this platform, to have these reasonings, to hear from my brethren and my sister in the comment section, to hold this joy on African Victory Day. And please drop a comment You know, what is your takeaway from African Victory Day? What can we learn? How can we, you know, keep this tradition that many of I and I were brought in with this joy and this knowledge and this, you know, these type of teachings? How can we keep this going? Drop a comment. Let us come. And again, if you want to strengthen the works and build, join the core over at Patreon. You know, invest, become an actionist. You know, make we work shoulder to shoulder. We're going to start having some Zoom meetings. We're going to build inside there. Trust me. Those who know, I know this is not a joke and this is not going to stop, because the time has come for the Lions to tell our own story. And this is the Lion Voice.
Lion voice. Ain't got no money, I'm short on cash, but a little bit I got to make it last. Some driving in the fast lane, drive too fast, and when they crash, no for them crack like glass. Some act like they never had no past. I ask them about their history, them grin and laugh. They don't know what we've been through, see what they into. I say I'm African now, they say they Africans too. Well, who built the OAU? When I ask them for them now, they can't say who. How many stay true and seek that light? How many sell them soul for the money and hype? It's funny how money make a man delight. The same money turn around and make him lose his life. But who gonna teach the people them how to survive? But we not the lion from Judah tribe. Who gonna make sure that the black man rise? We not the lion from Judah tribe. Who gonna take the dogs and open their eyes? We not the lion from Judah tribe. Who gonna shine his light, reveal all lies? We not the lion from Judah tribe. Some ain't got money, they lost their job. Some ain't got money, so they steal and rob. Some work hard just to get the car and the house, get laid off, creditors are kicked out. Some sell rocks to the people for the love of the money. Some start doing evil. Some push dope in their veins. Who lost our hope? Some break the chains. Tell them about the lion who can't be tamed. Rule Mount Zion crowned with a new name. Might of the Trinity manifest in the flesh. Now the energy can't be contained. Who gonna teach the people them how to survive? We not the lion from Judah tribe. Who gonna make sure that the black people rise? We not the lion from Judah tribe. Who gonna take the stripper, open the eyes? We not the lion from Judah tribe. Who gonna shine his light, reveal our lies? We not the lion from Judah tribe. In the unemployment line, heart filled with soul but ain't got a dime. Babylon, they want confuse your mind. In the peace and calm, so hard to find. Babylon filled with distractions, so many got the thoughts, so few got the actions. Babylon seeks satisfaction, mental chain cause chain reaction. 500 years and look what happened. Black man either in jail or he's rapping. Oh, we gun clapping his brother when he see the other man, he run for cover. And brothers don't even treat their sisters right. How many sell them soul for the money and hype? It's funny how money make a man delight. The same money turn around and make him lose his life.